Hey guys, this is Adrian Clark. Today we're going to be having a little Microsoft Access tutorial to kind of familiarize ourselves with the program and some database concepts that we might not know as of right now. This is going to be kind of a quick tutorial, and it's not going to cover many things in depth, but it's going to be good enough to get us started, I think. And the main purpose, as I said, will be to familiarize ourselves with the basic relational database knowledge and concepts that Access uses. And then we're going to use the design view to change and understand data types. We're going to add descriptions to fields. We're going to set default values, and then we're going to put input masks in some of our fields so we can make it a little bit more easy to create. As with most of my tutorials, I like to kind of put us in a scenario that we can use. So imagine we are a small bookstore owner looking to update to the database world. We've in the past just used a simple Excel spreadsheet to kind of keep track of all our customer information, as well as some credit card information and anything else we might need. It's kind of been stored in an Excel spreadsheet, but we haven't been able to access that kind of dynamically and efficiently and use it in any meaningful way as of right now. So we want to get into databases so we can have a little bit more options of what we can do with our data of our customers. And specifically, we want to keep track of our customers and their credit card information so we can send them online receipts. So when they come into our bookstore, they buy a book and then they leave, and we have the information there, and we can just simply send them an online receipt. I'm not going to cover how to send an online receipt. I think it's just a good way to put ourselves into a good mindset to continue on forward here. Now the specific goals we're going to be looking at in in Access. We're going to be introduced to simple relational database concepts that Access uses. We're going to edit relationships between tables and make them related. And then we're going to introduce primary and foreign keys and look at the differences and how we can use them in our tables. And then we're going to use the design view in Access to shape our database so it works and functions exactly how we want it to work and function. We're going to introduce data types and find out which data types are going to be the best options for this particular case. We're going to then look at input masks, specifically for the telephone numbers of our customers, so we can kind of input them quickly and accurately and have them all look the same. And then we're going to set default values for some of our fields. Alright, so we're here in our database. We can see here that it's kind of small. On the left side here, it says I have two tables open. I have the customer contact table, which will store all the contact information for our customers, and then I have the card information table, which will store all of the credit card information for our customers. We can see here that I have a customer code, first name, last name, address, and then the city, state, and phone and email. And then on the card information table, I have a card code, customer code, card number, expiration date, and then the security code that you see on the back of every credit card. And we want to tie these two together. So we want to know that you can look at the customer contact information and you can kind of see card information from it. And we're going to do that by kind of relating them together and adding a relationship in Access. But before we do that, I want to talk about a very important concept, and that is the concept of primary and foreign keys within tables. If you don't understand that, it's going to be hard to understand anything kind of going forward here. So primary and foreign keys. In databases and relational databases in particular, each table that you're working with will have a primary key to it, and that's kind of the unique identifier that each row or each record will have that's unique to itself. So if we were making a database of citizens of the United States, a social security number would be a good unique identifier, or a database of students, student ID would be a good unique identifier or primary key for that database. And this is often the first field in a table, so the first column. It's often the first thing you see when you open up a database table. That's just kind of design-wise and makes it more efficient to see. And different tables will have different keys that are unique to themselves. So in our particular case, our customer card information will have a unique key that kind of associates each unique credit card to each unique record. And then our contact information will both have a unique key as well, relating each person to its own record and its own unique key. Foreign key is a little bit different. It's same naming conventions and stuff as a primary key, only this is in another table and it references back to a primary key in a different table. And without a foreign key, we really can't define any relationships between tables. We can't really make a database in that sense. We can kind of just make spreadsheets that are disparate and separate. But with a foreign key, we can kind of make sure that two tables are actually related and connected to form an actual database. Now, in a table, you have one primary key, but you can have multiple foreign keys present in the table, and you can relate them however often you want. That's kind of just up to the database designer for that. The important thing to know here is that each table will have a unique primary key, and each table can have a foreign key. Right, so now that we've looked at primary and foreign keys, we can kind of look at which fields are the primary and the foreign keys in our tables. So on the customer contact table, the first field I have here is customer code, and this is acting as the primary key for this table. Every new customer will get a new customer code that's unique to them. So Adrian Clark, which is actually me, will get CC1, next person CC2, CC3, and so on. And then we can go into our card information area, and the card code here is going to be the primary key for this card information table. So every new credit card will get a card code of just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to kind of make it easier to see. And then the foreign key will be the customer code here, and that's relating right back to the customer contact table. So CC1, we see that I have 2 credit cards to the person with my same name, and that's pointing directly to customer contact 1 in our customer contact table. But right now these aren't related. There's no connection tying them together. So let's go ahead and add that. So Access makes adding relationships between one or more tables very, very simple. It's all done kind of visually. You don't have to worry about coding or making sure everything kind of lines up code-wise and hardware-wise. You kind of just have to worry about making sure that Access knows that tables are related. So on the top ribbon here, we can go to Database Tools, and we're going to be focusing here on the Relationships button. We're going to look at relationships here, so let's go ahead and click on it. And before I continue, I'm going to go ahead and close these other ones, because Access won't allow us to add relationships if both tables are open. So under the Design tab, we see we have a kind of a blank canvas, and this is where we're going to be dragging and dropping and adding relationships. I'm going to click on Show Table, and if I hit Control on my keyboard, I can kind of add them both together at the same time. Cool. So they're both here, and we can kind of drag them around like this and add them however we want. But we can see that there's no kind of connection relating the two. They're just kind of both in their own individual squares. So I'm going to go ahead and relate these tables together, and it's very simple, as I said. I'm going to click on the primary key, which is our customer code, and I want it to relate to the customer code here in our card information. I can do that just by clicking and kind of dragging it over and then dropping. And that'll give us an edit relationship option here. I had to click on Enforce Referential Integrity and these other options as well. Referential integrity will kind of make sure that the data in each field that we're working with here is identical. So the customer code is identical in card information as well as customer contact. Okay, when we're happy with it, we can go ahead and click on Create, and then Access sees we see here visually that they're not connected. This is, for example, this is a one-to-many relationship. I'm not going to cover what that means here, but if you want to go further, relational databases have a one-to-many relationships, or a one-to-one, or a many-to-many. And I recommend kind of looking up tutorials to get a grasp on what the differences are between them. But for right now, we know that these are connected now. We see this visual line here connecting, and we can kind of move around and see that it's always going to be connected. And this is it. Now we can just click save. Always make sure to save. And our tables are now related. Go ahead and open them back up. And if you go back, I have two cards here that we saved before. They're both under CC1. And now that they're related, under CC1 here, I can click on this little plus tab right here. Drops it down, and now it shows me the relationship. And it can show me that I have two cards, both under my name. So our tables are now related to each other. We now have a database. It might not be very functional or useful or large at this point, but it is a database. And now we can start focusing on the design of the database itself. We can start kind of making things neater and formatting this data to fit a specific template or design. It makes everything kind of look more, just more nice and efficient in a way. So we can start editing the design of the table by going to our design view window. And that's going to be in this top left area of the home ribbon, kind of the first option we see here. Right now I'm in the table view, but if I click on this ruler and pencil here, it kind of gives us, it puts us into the design view, and we can toggle back and forth between these two. And in the design view here, we have a window that's different from the table view, and this kind of gives us a behind the scenes look at what's happening in our database. And we can edit the names of our fields, we can edit the data types, we can add descriptions. For this tutorial, we're going to be looking at data types, we're going to be adding input masks, and we're going to be adding default values to make entering data a little bit more efficient and smooth. So Access has several data types that we can work with. I have 6 here, but there are more. For this particular tutorial and this particular database, we don't really need to worry about any of the other ones. What we're really focused on is short text and long text, numbers, date, time, currency, auto number, and yes or no. Now short text and long text, they're both text, they're both alphanumeric numbers and letters. The only thing is that short text is limited to 255 characters. I think that is 1 byte. And a long text is not limited to any specific amount. Date time is pretty obvious. It's just a nice formatting for date and time. Currency. Auto number is, it's often used for making the primary key. Just a quick way to have Access generate a number for us that's unique for each record. We have yes or no, which is just a simple Boolean true or false. And then we also have numbers, and I skipped over numbers, and numbers are what you think. The only thing is that Access will treat them as numbers and not text. We can actually perform operations on these numbers and methods on these numbers. We can divide, we can multiply, and we can do other stuff that you would do with math that you can't really do with numbers as text or as strings. Alright, so I'm back in the table view, and we can see here that everything has its own data type. Obviously first name and last name are short text, as is the address, unless you have a super long address. Everything else is kind of short text as well. Even the phone number. And the reason I have phone number as short text is because we're not doing any kind of mathematical operations on them. Even though they are numbers, we're not adding them together or dividing phone numbers between each other. We're kind of just using that as text in a way. We're just using it as information. So phone numbers are short text. So now that we know that each record has its own data type, and we kind of know the basics of what each data type is, we can start editing the input mask and make things run a little bit more faster when we create records. Input masks are great because they kind of give us a template and they structure our data in a particular way. So they'll structure telephone numbers in a particular way, or email addresses in a particular way, or really anything else that you kind of want a kind of set structure for. Back in our View tab, or our table window, I have phone numbers here. And as I said before, they're just numbers, and I want to format them to be, that kind of standard phone number layout. And we can do that, each individually, or we can edit the input mask and make it so that every new record and every record we already have will use that same format. Let's go back into the design view window. I want to make sure that I'm on phone number. And then I'm going to go down to input mask. And if I know how Access structures this, I can edit it manually. Or I can go over to this ellipses button here on the right of the option, click that, and luckily for us, phone number is the first one we see here. We can go ahead and try it out and make sure everything looks correct. But it also gives us options for social security numbers, passwords, other stuff like that. Go ahead and click on next. Do I want to change the input mask? It's going to give me an option to say if I want to edit it further. In this particular case, I don't. Everything looks good for me. And then it'll give us two options for how we wanted to store and display the data. We can store it without any of the symbols, or we can use the symbols. I like to use the symbols. It looks neater and cleaner. And that's it. Go ahead and finish that off. And you can see here that it kind of enters in this code that that Access will now use to structure our data the way we want it to. Go ahead and save that out. And now back in our table window, we see here that all the phone numbers are now in that proper layout. And we could do the same thing for our email addresses, our addresses if they have the same street or anything like that. So in our customer contact table, we can see here that it looks like every one of our contacts, of our customers, is in the state of Michigan. We could pretend that our bookstore that we're working on is in the state of Michigan. And we want to make it so that every new record will, by default, display Michigan. We can edit that if it changes, but just to speed things up, let's make the default value Michigan. So every time we add a new record, we can enter in the data, but Michigan and state will already be filled in for us. And as with the input mask and our data types, editing our default values will be in the design view window again. Go ahead and click into the design view. I'll click on state because we're going to edit the state default value, and just simply typing it in for this case. Make sure I spell it right. It'll also give us options for other things we want that we can name, but Michigan works for us. It'll store it as a string, so the quotations around it will make sure that it's a string. Which is this text value. You can save that out, go into view, and we can see here that it'll add Michigan here. And if we go ahead and we add a new record, Michigan will automatically show up. And for the same thing as all the other records that we make, it'll always show Michigan. And if we wanted to, we can always change that if we have someone from Ohio or California or any other place. Now that's all I'm going to cover with this particular tutorial. There is a ton of more information to learn about Access and databases in general. I'm learning more and more every single day, every time I study to learn more about this stuff. And I recommend going on YouTube and looking up other tutorials and other information that you can find on the program. But hopefully this tutorial will get us started with a small understanding of what we can do with Access and with the database in general. We looked at entering input masks, entering default values. We looked at data types. We looked at primary and foreign keys. We did a little bit of design work as well. And hopefully this will be enough to get you started getting comfortable with databases and with Access, and hopefully you can, in our case, jump up from that long Excel spreadsheet to a functioning and dynamic database.